And now it's the Anna show. And we got ready
Welcome.
today by evicting her boyfriend from the couch. So she had the good background. And we
Yeah,
said that
that
start with you were my guest at 10X London, which we slipped in right before coronavirus canceled everything. And we made a little video. So you want to start with our little video? You did such a
sounds
nice.
good to me.
Okay, let me set that up. Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit faster than usual, but no one will know the difference, I think. If they do, I'll change it back. Let's see. Share screen. There. Okay, we ready? Ready. Move this over here. What is this? It's too fast.
Who are you? What do you do?
My name is Anne, and I'm managing the medical writing team at factory-cro.
All right, I'll move back to normal.
What does factory-cro group do?
We are a contract research organization in medical devices, medical technology, and as such, we are involved in clinical trials. So the clinical trial strategy, the conduct of the clinical trials, and the evaluation of clinical data.
Is a clinical beta trial pretty much standard no matter in which country you run it and which governing body you seek to present the data to, or is it quite different?
It's quite different whether you would do it for the FDA market versus European market or Australian, for example. Yeah.
Okay, and how big is your company? I know you recently acquired a friend of mine's company out of Boston. How many employees do you have now?
Correct. We are with 120 employees now.
And how many countries do you have a beachhead?
Our headquarters are in the Netherlands. We are about 40 there. We have an office in Boston, in San Diego, in Sydney, and in Melbourne.
So would I limit the trials that I might do with you to the places where you have a physical presence, or?
No, certainly not. No, so for example, for Europe, we are located in the Netherlands, but we really cover full Europe. So we, for the countries where we speak the language, so UK, Ireland, Germany, Belgium, sometimes France and Spain, depending on who's the CRA involved, we would conduct that ourselves, and otherwise we have contractors that can help us out.
You introduced yourself as being the head of the medical writing group. What does that do versus the other parts that I typically think of with clinical trials?
Yeah, so the clinical operations side is really going to the sites, doing the data monitoring, everything surrounded by that. Medical writing is really the study design development, protocol development, analyzing the data at the end of the study, but also manuscript writing, our clinical evaluation report writing, post-market clinical follow-up design, those kind of things.
So you do everything from the home office, but somebody else goes out and gets the
Correct.
patients
Yes.
and the samples and the like.
Yes.
It's my understanding that there are a lot of CRO companies. How do you compare? What's your point of difference? Why should we choose you versus one of those other CROs?
Well, first of all, we are really focused on medical devices and IVDs, so that compares us, or differentiates us from the pharma CROs. So I think that's a very good reason to choose for us. And the other thing is that we have a great team. Everybody's really working as a team together, very short communication lines. We like to be part of the team of our client, and we like the client to be part of our team as well.
Fair enough. There are a lot of new regulations and drafts all the time. Do you get hit every time there's a new regulation or draft guidance that you are changing the way you approach a clinical trial? Or is it, no, we're pretty...
Well, there is not much changing the way how you conduct a clinical trial. For example, now with the MDR, there's different requirements on the clinical evidence that you need, or how you have to capture that post-market as well. But how you conduct your trial, the good clinical practice, that's not going to change much. In some aspects, but not the general trial itself.
Can you give us, in closing, an example of a company that came to you and you said, you know what, you're not ready for a clinical trial? And how do you work that?
Yeah, often enough. What we sometimes see is that the clients are coming to us already while they're still in their design phase. They still have to conduct some of their animal studies, etc. We know that that's not our expertise, so we would send them to some friends of us that do know that knowledge.
But at what point does it make sense to, advise us? How early should you bring in your CRO partner?
So it depends a bit if you would like to have the state of the art that Michelle was referring to. That's something we could help with. So that's very early stages. As soon as you're towards the end of your design phase, let's say maybe 6 months from that, it makes sense to start designing your clinical trial as well. But really your clinical trial strategy, like what type of studies do you want to conduct? I would advise to be very early, in very early stages, because Well, in the end, it does cost some money, so you have to make sure that you know what's coming up.
Thank you. That's my friend Anne from Factory-cro.
Oh, it's nice to see yourself back on video.
Well, yes, I know. I just left that up for a second. So you're now not factory-cro group, but you are. Pronounce it for us.
Avenia.
You sound unsure.
Yeah, I'm sounding unsure because it's a very strange sound for in Dutch language. I would say in Dutch, I would say Avania.
Okay, we can handle that.
But it's like, yeah. I believe Avenia is the global new name that we are moving forward on.
You were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 brands before? Or
We were 4, yes. So we were BBA in Boston. We were 5 Corners in Australia, in Sydney and Melbourne. And we were Milestone in San Diego. And Factory in Bilthoven, the Netherlands.
So Factory came first.
Factory was founded like in 1990, 1988, I think the first.
And which one did you buy first? Do you know?
Which one did we acquire first? 5 Corners, I believe. And then Milestone and then BBA. I'm not sure about 5 Corners and Milestone. Could be the other way around.
And remind me, 5 Corners is where?
Australia.
Australia. And Milestone is?
San Diego.
Okay, and Boston. Got it. All right. Well, I'll say that I particularly enjoyed, I was watching the video on this screen and you were tiny over there. And when I looked over there, I saw how broadly you were smiling at yourself. Oh, you're not used to seeing yourself on video, but you did a nice job. Let's hear it for Anna. I can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Applauding.
No, part of it I was smiling because part of what I was saying might not be fully accurate anymore.
Oh, really? What's not accurate anymore?
Well, the part where I said like if you're still in your design phase, you might be too early to come to us because like actually with the group in Boston being part of us, we do quite a bit of the regulatory part before the clinical trials as well. So it's I can be honest and saying that's not my expertise, but we do have that expertise in-house as well.
Okay. So I'll ask the question again. Is there a time when it's too early to engage you?
It's probably too early if you didn't start with having any type of prototype or design of your product.
That does sound.
But I think it's like at the moment that you do have that and you want to start thinking about what type of preclinical testing should I do, what type of standards are there that I should fulfill, or what type of clinical testing in the end as well do I need to do? I think that's something that we could help with in early stages already.
For our friends scattered around the world, I'll tell you that my knowledge here is rather sparse, so you better fill up the questions thing soon, or I'm just going to be looking at you like this.
Okay.
So go ahead and teach us a thing about medical writing. What should we know about that?
What should you know about medical writing? Medical writing is broader than many people think. In our case, at least, in our company, if I would ask most people what do you do if you're a medical writer, it's probably going to refer to the study report at the end of the study, writing up the results. But what our medical writers typically are part of is also the study design. So as soon as you say, well, I want to go to that market, like what should I do? There are all type of choices to be made. You have to think about, well, what stage am I in? Which country am I going to? What do I want to prove with my study? And that whole study design related to it can be, well, our medical writers can be part of that. For Europe, actually, with the medical device regulation coming in, there is a need to do systematic literature review to make it scientifically robust, your study design, and to really plan that.
You skated by that as though I understood really what that meant. I got the words, but
okay.
The scientific review, what's involved in that?
So if you want to make sure that your study makes sense from a scientific point of view, you want to make sure to see what is out in the scientific literature in terms of clinical studies that have been conducted, complications or what we call adverse events for other products that are on the market, which might be very similar, or which might be like the generally used devices, the risk associated with them, but also the performance associated with them. So if you design some new type of knee treatment for osteoarthritis, you want to make sure that you know what other treatments are there, what are the risks, and what are the benefits. And by knowing that, you can decide how your study should look like as well. Do you want to have the same type of performance endpoints, like the same type of measurements? So you can say, well, my product is at least as good as that other product is on the market. Or is your product totally different and can't you compare it all? And in that case, what type of endpoints do make sense to measure for your product?
I think you just said the difference between a 510K and a de novo.
Yes, like being like similar to another product versus not. Yeah, I think, yeah, that's true. For a 510K, you have the substantially equivalent devices.
And therefore need to compare to that substantially equivalent device by definition,
Correct.
right?
Yes. Yes. And for the Novo, there is not necessarily a product that compares to that. So you have to, well, show more evidence from your own side. You have to probably conduct more trials or have more background that can, well, inform the notified body or the FDA that you are well, still safe and perform as intended.
Okay, well, as a writer, I've never done a clinical trial, but in my mind, I think it's $1 million proposition. Is that right? How much does it cost to run an average clinical trial? Is there an average?
Is there an average? No, we have trials for like 100,000 euros, and we have trials with for millions of euros or dollars. So it really depends on what you want to investigate. So if it's like many of our trials are first in man studies. So the first time you try it on a human, you've only tried it in animals before or only in a petri dish, and you want to make sure that it's also safe to use in human. So you're not going to try that out directly on 500 patients. You want to make sure to first test it in 5 or maybe 15 or maybe 30 maximum. So those are relatively small. There is quite some time involved in making sure that all the data is captured right, that the physicians involved know really what they are doing, that they're often not so used to the device or to the trial itself. So you really put a lot of time investment in that. But then it's only 30 subjects and there is only so much to do with that data. So those are studies that might be a bit smaller. But then
would you say that the number of subjects is the greatest positively correlated variable to cost? Each patient adds a fixed
amount. The number of subjects and the duration of the study. So a study that only takes 3 months because you directly know whether it's safe or not, versus a study that takes 5 years because it's an implantable and you want to see whether it really that costs in the end as well, because you have a database that takes longer. The subject has to come back to the hospital every time there is more data to collect. Yeah.
My dog is snoring. Can you hear him snoring? Do I need to get him out of the room?
I didn't notice. Anyone else? Did anyone else notice?
I see that Nick Anderson's on the call. I'm definitely going to invite him to come on camera soon. If A, his newborn is awake, because we want to meet her, and B, when he teaches us about health economics, he always says, you need data, you need the study. So I'll ask, how often, I bet rarely, but how often do you have a health economist engage you, or do you have any at Vanya, however you chose to pronounce it, on your team? Do you have one?
We do not have one. We do not have a health economist in our team. We like
Makes
most.
sense, yeah.
It makes sense, but it does not always make sense for the clients that we work with, for the majority of clients, because they want to get on the market, like most of them, or they want to stay on the market. And for that, they primarily have to show safety and performance, or in Europe and in the US, safety and efficacy. And health economics, I think it's a very important factor, but it's not necessarily from a regulatory point of view required. It's more from a marketing point of
Not from a
view.
regulatory, but why are we doing this if we can't sell any? And we can't sell any unless we convince a value analysis committee. So, Nick, as soon as Lady's awake, or you can wrest her away from your wife, send a note and I'll add you to the screen, because I'd be very interested in your perspective on that. Tell me too.
No, I think we sometimes do those type of studies, but you see that's often coming from a different group within the company, and they are, often have different priorities and buckets of money that they can spend on it. So yeah, I think it will be a nice conversation. So please do come online.
Are you saying that? Oh, he's got his hand up, so that means that I guess she's awake.
There.
Yeah, I think so. Promote to panelist. We can't hear you yet. Now we can maybe hear you.
I'm on.
This looks like the same place where you had all the boxes.
It's different.
Where are the boxes?
Downstairs.
Is this a room that has nothing in it yet?
Yeah, nothing. I kind of like it this way.
You echo. You need something to absorb the sound.
Yeah, I do, huh?
Is she awake or no?
She's awake. She's awake in the other room. Should I get her and bring her?
The conference has stopped.
Okay, you two talk amongst yourselves. I'll go get a baby.
Okay. I want to ask you about prototypes. So let's say I just have a prototype, and it's in America, but I want to work with you, and you're in the Netherlands, but I know you have San Diego and Boston too. How do you begin to get your head around how to do a clinical trial on something that is still in design? I have a prototype. I'm not holding it, touching it. How do you engage at that point? Or is it so rare nobody engages at that point, really?
No, we do. I like to mention one. I cannot mention the trial probably, but we did one trial which was really prototype. It was a nerve stimulator, and they really tried it out to in patients to see whether the concept would work. And it was there was no user interface yet designed, and you could clearly see that there's still some work to do from a design point of view. There we go.
Funny. She's walking over. Is that what you were simulating there?
Yeah, here she is.
So cute.
Properly.
And she slept really well last night, which means Mom and I slept really well last night.
Not everyone knows her. Introduce her properly.
So we named her Lady. Going out on a limb on that one. But she is 3 weeks old today.
Wow. Does she have a middle name, or is it just Lady?
Just Lady. We have 4 kids. This is number 4, but we have a 9-year gap between the last one and this one. And that was on purpose, by the way. We know how babies are made.
Yes. Okay. Because it was the question on everyone's mind.
Yeah.
And
but no,
I know it's a little early to tell, but do you know what she's going to do for a living? Has she shown any characteristics that,
This is actually her 4th web conference on health economics. So I think I'm kind of feeling health Oh, he disagrees.
Would she go up a little bit?
I need her to do interior design because look at this office, right?
Am I right?
But no, but Anna, that to Joe's point with health economics, that I'll work with CROs in the United States. One of them's called TTI and another one's called Proxima CRO.
I never thought of Beth's group as a CRO.
Yeah, they do. They have a CRO function separate from their health economics boutique.
Oh, I see. That must be part of what she got when she joined April.
Yes, yes. So April's group is really, but it's all one happy family now. But really the point of that is that when I used to be a payer, and we would end up having these companies that had just conducted a $5 million, 50-month long prospective study, and they knocked it out of the park with the regulators, and they just spent, like I said, 4, 5, 6, $7 million on a trial. And then that data would come to me at Intermountain Healthcare, and I would read the trial and be like, this is a perfect regulatory study, but you have done nothing that a payer would want to see. And in some regard, you blew $5 million or 3 million or 300,000. That, yeah, you got the check, the signature from the regulator, but the regulator doesn't write money checks. And if CROs have a market access / health economics group, that when a study protocol has been written and the systematic literature review has been accomplished, to walk that down to the health economists and say, will you guys look at this before we charge the client $2 million for the study, and make sure that this study not only will get them regulatory approval, but also reimbursed. The value of your company, Avanya, goes up immensely, because companies then know you're a one-stop shop in Europe or Australia or San Diego or Boston, that they're not going to have to use you to get regulatory approval and then go spend another $500,000 or $5 million to go do another study to get Nick Anderson approval. But let me mute myself.
Why, are we about to cry?
She's getting...
Jeff, you raised your hand. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. The simple question: what is it that the buyers need that the regulators do not? I mean, regulators are looking at safety and efficacy. What other information does the buyer need? Like an economic case, or what the end price is going to be, or what's the difference there?
Let me attempt, while you're on mute there, Nicholas. That is a hijacking conversation that would...
I know. I want to get back
well
to
down into Nick going on and on, but it's the difference. It's basically a point of difference thing. If you say, here's something safe that I'm already using, and here's something identical to that,
I see.
Why should I care? I already have this.
Okay, so it's
the difference between marketing
cares about, or
positioning,
regulatory cares about safety and efficacy, and others care about why is it better than what's out there?
Why should I care? Why should I be paying for this?
Yep.
Joe, should I
give
give
my rabbit hole? Is a quick question.
No, I completely dispatched the answer. I've listened to enough of your valuable information. I've been able to regurgitate some of it.
Should I do the car analogy of the EPA?
No.
Okay.
Nobody cares. This is Anna's time.
No, I just want to comment.
Come on, for the record.
That's true. Thanks, Jeff.
I just want to comment on that, that once, if I do address it the other way around, so once they come in with a more marketing or health economics study, and I say to them, well, did you think about these and these things on the regulatory aspects? Because to be honest, that's my expertise. Then they often say, well, we don't care about that. That's a different department. Just do the thing that I'm asking you for. And it's like, yeah, but are you sure? Because indeed, if you, Nick, you probably agree, if you do that health economics study, there is so much safety and performance data that you can capture as well, also the other way around. But we do see that that's often being different department, different buckets of money. We don't care, and we don't want you to interrupt.
If I were the boss, the owner of that company, I'd be pissed. I mean, it sounds like terrifically short-sighted. That there's got to be so much overlap that I honestly, as I think about it more, I'm surprised that you don't have a health economist full-time function at your company? It sounds like it just makes so much sense.
I do have to state, and again, I'm not very expertise in the sector, so I might have just missed it, but we do have reimbursement services in the US, and we have a team working on that. But yeah, we generally don't involve them too much in the clinical trial design for the regulatory purposes.
Nick, this is
Nick, is it the
question
same?
for you. What do you think? I mean, you should have a health economist look at any study before it goes out.
Yeah, and you can kill two birds with one stone. So let's put Anna in one bucket and Nick in another. You know, she's regulatory with Michelle Lott and people that know what regulators want. And then you have Nick Anderson and his payer friends like Beth and April. That what Anna may ask for is 10 patients prospective in 2 clinics looking at men over the age of 50 with hypertension. And then these people that are just down the hallway in a different cubicle say, well, actually, after reviewing the systematic literature review, and then after reviewing the policies on whatever this is supposed to treat, hypertension or cancer or whatever it is, if you only did 28 more patients and you went 6 extra months, not only would you get regulatory approval, which I don't know anything about, but Anna does, and Anna said that at least this much is good enough, but you would also get reimbursement. So for the mere adding of 20 extra patients and an extra 6 months, you know, if you just want this, it's $2 million. If you want all of this, it's $3.5 million. And then let the client take it back to the CEO and be like, let's just spend the extra $1.5 million for the extra 6 months of research, and we'll kill both birds with that one clinical trial. Otherwise, you're going to run the ANNA study and you're going to get regulatory approval. Then you got to go do it all over again to get reimbursement approval.
Sounds terribly wasteful. I want to call out Eddie and Elizabeth and Lee and Mike and Sue. I think I captured all the manufacturers on the call. Where you are in terms of trials and health economics. I can add you to the call and we can see if we can knock out something that's specific for you. Anna, your reaction to what Nick said?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better to kill more birds with one stone. There should be somewhere a line drawn, though. What we see is that the more investigators you ask for their comments on what is interesting from the practical point of view, you get more and more comments, and there should be a moment that you can say, well, this is where we're going for, and let's conduct a trial, because if it takes too long, that costs money as well. But I think there are very important factors, and I think it makes sense to review that to some extent.
Sue, you want to comment on where you are with your work?
Sure. Actually, I received an investment from TEDCO recently, and I have certain milestones that I have to reach. I have an alpha prototype built. We've went around through friends and family, and now we're in seed and pre-seed. And we conducted our discovery user studies and have spoken to potential licensing partners who have some of the alpha prototypes. So what we're right now, we have a meeting with the FDA for a pre-sub packet that we submitted early September. And so we're going to need a beta prototype and a medical manufacturing company to take us to the full FDA process. So right now, my milestone at TEDCO is to get estimates on 3 different medical manufacturing companies, and we'll probably, go with the best and the cheapest that can help build a beta prototype and help prepare the 510K Class 2 FDA approval.
Where does, I tend to think of 510Ks and de novos getting clearance from FDA independent of clinical trials. Is there a sequence?
No, we actually, we don't need and we don't need to trial on human patients. All we need lab. Everything can be done in the lab using 50 cc's and 100 cc's, and we have a medical device. It's a type of filter all-in-one package, one needle filter for filtering medications packaged in glass ampules. The current process requires 2 needles, a filter needle, and multiple exchanges, and then you have to take the needle off and recap it, and that's where a lot of needle stick injuries happen. So we built I came up with an all-in-one package, one needle filter, so it decreases the chance of needle stick injuries and decreases chance of sepsis. And it's a much safer, quicker. We timed it. It takes about a third to a half the time. So we're in the process of raising funds for the whole preparation and building for the beta prototype.
I added Mike, even though he didn't raise his hand, because he's also in the needle business. And I wonder what similarities there are between you and your approaches to trials. Michael, we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, I'm sort of in the needle business, Joe. We're actually making devices that connect to needles. So the device we're working on at GuideStar is a device specific for the epidural procedure. And this is actually a really timely call for us, because one of the things that we're trying to look at right now is how are we going to verify that our device works. I mean, we can verify on the bench. We have a prototype that works on the bench, great, but we need to have it in human tissue. We need to have it in humans. And so that's actually a big question for us is how do we show that this device works when you do an epidural procedure into a human? And so, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of questions about like how many people are we going to need for this trial. We expect to have to do a human trial to show safety and efficacy. So that's part of what we're looking at right now. We're actually looking at doing animal testing right now as well. And then, of course, we have the second question, and I've reached out to Nick, but I haven't had a chance to follow up because I've been so busy. But we want to follow up there as well, because we really want to know how can we prove that this device not only works, but actually makes sense economically, for a hospital that's saying like, okay, well, we do these epidurals and we get this such and such injury rate, which has such and such cost. If I use your device, I'm going to reduce my injury rate by X amount. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense for me to buy your device. However, the injury rate for epidurals is around 2%. So to show the economic efficacy of that might be like literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients, and we clearly don't have the money for that. So while I think we'd love to do it all at once, I think it's probably going to be more like a 2-stage process where we do an FDA trial, which might be some hopefully much smaller number of patients, and then look at the economic trial later.
Nicholas, unmute yourself.
Okay.
The staged approach, does it make, I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
the function of I don't have enough money, so I have no choice, but it seems so inefficient.
So there's a chance that Mike won't need, uh-oh, it's all frozen. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We do.
Mike's product may not need reimbursement, but it's going to need value analysis committee approval. And if it's primarily for epidurals and that's principally an inpatient procedure, the insurance company would be none the wiser, but he's still going to need to run the study for regulatory. But you can pepper into that with the systematic literature review. And like you said, Mike, if the incidence of a problem with an epidural is only 2%, you're going to have to do this in a zillion patients in order to show that you decrease that by a statistically significant amount. And that's a $100 million, 5,000-year-long study. So what you have to do is a health economic type study where you do what you can in whatever number of patients Anne tells you. She'll say, you need to do it in 100 epidural patients. And you go, yes, but that's not going to be enough to show a decrease. And then you marry that data with what's already been published. And you say, due to obvious constraints, we're not going to be able to go do a 10,000 patient prospective 5-year long study. But this paper and this paper say that if we did, we would show a statistically significant number of reductions. So that's the type of marrying of a regulatory type study with a reimbursement health economic type study that you're going to have if you're going to go in front of a value analysis committee or value analysis team and show that they should be buying your product and not what they've been buying.
Long-time fans will recognize this next line of thinking, which is, I don't know what comes first in medical device development. You talk to Joe Anderson, it's quality. You talk to, Michelle, it's regulatory. And today I'm hearing you really better talk to Nick up front, because Mike, I'm, zillions of and 5,000 a year and $100 million, you might be like, I should have stayed home today. Well, you probably are home today. But I wonder if that was the first conversation you had, would you be on this development path? Or would you be like, oh, I don't know how we would possibly raise enough money to do that?
Well, I think for us, Joe, we believe this product improves the procedure, not just economically, but it makes it easier for the doctor. We believe it makes it safer for the patient, although that's the hard part to prove. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, we're not doing this, because we think it's a slam dunk. We're doing it because we really think it's going to make a difference for patients. Like hundreds of thousands of patients are getting injured every year, and we're like, hey, let's make a device that prevents that. And hundreds of people are getting paralyzed every year, and it's stupid. And let's make a device that makes sure that doesn't happen anymore.
Before I give Jenny the mic, Anna, this is your call. What have you heard from Sue and from Mike that prompts some thoughts about things they might consider?
I think, like, for Sue, for the 510K and the submissions, I was just wondering what, like, if you're working with the pre-sub, whether you have several rounds scheduled, or whether there is a specific topic that you're addressing now, just out of interest.
We have a pre-sub submitted for a 510K and a meeting early September to prepare for a total beta prototype, and hopefully an approval early next year. Because of COVID, a lot of drugs are now in shortage and only available in glass ampoules, and also for global distribution of the COVID vaccine, it might just be packaged in a glass ampoule. They're going to grab any kind of glass they have. So it's kind of important for us to get to market as quick as possible. So
Okay.
we're going to do everything we can to get there.
Does the FDA know that as well?
Yeah, I hope they do. They're looking at my LinkedIn profile and they know we're coming. I have some friends that work over there. I live in Maryland near the FDA. So, and I'm a pharmacist by trade. So a lot of pharmacists work at the FDA. So hopefully, yeah. And I've applied for a SBIR grant, NSF grant for COVID relief. And I'm waiting to hear back about that.
Okay. Yeah, I heard some good stories about quick turnaround if it's kind of COVID related. So I hope that works in your advantage as well in this case.
Me too.
Yeah.
You have anything for Mike?
Yeah, for Mike, I was wondering indeed which market he was targeting for. It sounds you're going to the US first, right?
Yeah, USA would be our primary market. We'd come to the other markets later. Although Europe is on our radar for sure.
Okay. Yeah, because in this case, well, similar to having health economics included, it might make sense to think about like what would be important for getting on the European market as well, like, and what data can you capture already in this stage in the US. We often see many of our clients first going to Europe or Australia because the path was a bit shorter in terms of conducting your clinical trials or getting data on short notice. but it really depends if you have good connections already with the investigators in the US and also with the FDA. That's a path to move forward as well, but sometimes something to consider to include other regional areas as well.
Yeah.
Jenny, you wanted to add?
I would agree with that, Anne. Using a regional centre to run first studies can be a lot quicker and cheaper than trying to look at eating the whole elephant in the US. And I very much suggest to Mike that he does look at Australia or a small city in Europe. He can collect his data. He's going to have real data that can be then used with the FDA later on. Going to be a lot cheaper, and it's going to be so much quicker. And also, if you're looking at Australia, we have financial incentives to have companies come here. You can get some pretty good grants. About 40% of your costs can be refunded to you in cash. It's definitely worth looking at. Happy to talk to you offline about this later if you're interested.
Jenny,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to know.
you have a, as I recall, a software that assists for clinical trials. Can you?
Yes, our software is used for preclinical through to post-market. We developed this about 15 years ago. We were the first company in the world to have software that was available also on an iPad. Before an iPad, it was a different device back then. We've got all of the regulatory requirements, and you can use it for a small study and then take it through to a larger study later on. We're more economical than some of the bigger players, and our headquarters are regional, although we do run studies around the world.
And I don't understand what Jenny said enough. Would you ask her a really insightful question so that you understand whether or not she has something that you guys should use?
At 1:45 in the morning, I don't know how understandable I'm going to be.
No, this is strictly I'm a marketing guy. This isn't my thing. Now she's talking your language. What does she have that you might need, or if you don't feel you need it, why? Because you have a process that is working perfectly fine for you.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Jenny, the software that you developed for the clinical trial, is that more for the data collection at the site of the sponsor or the investigator, or is it to collect data from the patient directly, like for example in a home situation?
Can be either.
Okay. And the difference between your software and like maybe the typical data management databases like IMATNet or DF Discover or well, we have Castor here in the Netherlands. That's probably very local. Is that the part being available on an iPad and maybe on a smartphone and those sort of things, or
Absolutely,
do I understand that correctly?
Absolutely. All of our software has been enabled for all devices for about 6 years now. So you can collect your data on a phone, any sort of a pad. You can take photos. You can. We're running remote trials as well. So in this case, the participant may no longer be able to go to the hospital for a test because of COVID. So we can collect that data via the participant in the participant's own home, and then upload it into the database.
This is exactly why you need to ask these questions, because you rattled off 3 other software platforms that you would use in a trial. Did you hear anything unique about Jenny's that would make you switch?
I think the other software programs that we used to are well in relative early stages with respect to being available on pads and being available for the subject. So they're very strong in, like, from a regulatory point of view. They are very strong in having an audit trail, so seeing what changes have been made in the past and by whom. But it's thus far, I've seen some difficulties with getting that out on smaller devices or towards the patients. I see all type of technologies being developed, but bringing that all together is well, I think that would be a good thing to have that all in one system. Yeah. And it sounds like you have that, right, Jenny?
Yes, we do. We do. The other thing is, you know, before you can join a trial, you may have 30 pages of paper that you have to work through. You may not be very proficient in the language that the document has been written in. We have this a lot in Australia because we have people from so many countries. We've developed an electronic version of this so that participants are able to see the information on their iPad or on their home computer. They have videos, they have maybe we might have some cartoons, there's some easy to understand documents, and they'll be taken through the processes of what's going to be involved in that trial or study. And they are then, they have a little quiz to do to ensure that they understand the process that they'll be going through. So long as they're agreeable and so long as their particular situation fits the requirements of the trial, we can then have them enrolled. There are several other companies that have similar software. I think one of the things that we're quicker at is that we're doing our videos in-house, so they're very quickly put together. We're multilingual, and the response so far has been phenomenal. The other thing is you can buy this particular segment of our software on its own, and then you may have a different program that you wish to connect to. We can do the interface into something else, so you're not tied to us if you don't want to be. So we're giving our clients lots of choice.
That sounds good. And well, in Europe at least, and I believe in Australia, it's the same, that all patient-facing information has to go to the ethics committee or the institutional review board.
Yes, absolutely.
How does that work from a software perspective? Do you send them the application?
They absolutely love it.
Okay.
It's very quick. It's easily understandable. One of the FDA requirements is that the participant needs to understand what the trial will be about and also their involvement. And this is a much easier way of explaining it to them with video, sound, than just giving them 30 pages of paper.
Yep.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks for staying awake. Next time, put on your afternoon smile so we can see you. It's far more effective. So we can.
Oh, sweetheart, if you could see what I have on.
Well, we're all here.
Well, we can.
Just push a button. Larry, you had a question?
Next time.
Larry, you had a question.
Yes. When you're designing the trial, I had an experience one time that told me I needed to do a better job in planning. It's something called clinically significant endpoints, and those can be established before you even have the device design. You're basically saying, doctor, we're going to develop a device for heart failure. What would we have to do to convince you that this product is one that you'd want to use for heart failure patients? And you can establish, well, it's got to reduce this, it's got to do this, it's got to get the hospitalization down, and then from the standpoint of okay, that we know what we've got to achieve. Now let's design a device that can actually do that. And I sat for a few years on an FDA panel, their circulatory systems panel as the industry representative. There was one incident there that I'll never forget. This company got up and said, we've developed a device that's for relieving the symptoms of ischemia when angioplasty balloons, when they were doing angioplasties. When you inflate the angioplasty balloon, the blood stops and the heart starts to react as if it's having a heart attack. And they call it something called the ST elevation is what they call it. it's an EKG, the ST goes up. So this company designed a study that would measure the ST elevation before the therapy was started, and then when they started the therapy, they would look at the ST elevation, and the idea was they had to have a 40 or 50% reduction in ST elevation. Okay, and that was their endpoint they achieved. So they present the data to the FDA panel, and one of the panel members, who happened to be a cardiac surgeon, said, "Okay, you've taken the ST elevation, and with your therapy, you've reduced the ST elevation down by 47%." And he says, "So what?" And the, and the company said, "Well, that's, ischemia is bad. When the heart's in stress, the ST goes up. Clearly the heart's better functioning when you use our therapy." And the guy says, "No, you got to show me something that is clinically significant from the standpoint of the patient. Did the patients live longer? Were their outcomes better? And this company literally had spent hundreds of thousands of, maybe more, on a clinical trial, multi-center clinical trial, got a good statistical significance of their endpoint, got all the way to the panel, and got blown out of the water. And I'll never forget that, because I was like, I wouldn't want to be the guy who designed that trial. But anyway, that's that. I want to tell that story only because that's something that companies don't necessarily think about in the early planning of the clinical trial. Is what do our endpoints mean? Are the doctors going to buy our product? Well, that's my story for the day. I just wanted to throw that in.
It was charming.
Thank you. No, and I think it highlights the importance of going for a pre-sub at the FDA, where you discuss your clinical trial design, and to see what they think about it, like prior to conducting that trial. And the difficulty is that
I think what Larry's talking about is purely Nick's domain of who's going to care and pay for it. I mean, FDA would say, is it safe and efficacious? And yes, and good, right?
Yeah, and that's where I would say, Larry, I could kiss you for bringing up this example.
That's okay. A handshake would be fine.
We're not allowed to do that either anymore. But this is the definition of health economics. It's the distinction between clinical validity and clinical utility. And clinical validity is what that company showed. They showed the ST waveform in an EKG improves by 40%. That is all clinical validity. I give this example in this lecture with Joe. What if I had a diagnostic test that was 99% sensitive and specific, that I could give to 4-year-olds to tell them their propensity for getting Alzheimer's disease when they're 80? Incredible clinical validity, zero clinical utility, because there's nothing you can do. There's no prophylactic, there's no drug, there's no intervention that you can do to prevent that 4-year-old from getting Alzheimer's when they're 80, even though the test said they're going to get it. So the regulators might look at this and go, what a fantastic technology. I mean, you've got clinical validity coming out your ears, 99% sensitivity and specificity. Doesn't get much better than that. But then the people that write the checks, not the FDA doesn't write checks. So I'm bifurcating regulatory from reimbursement. I couldn't care less what the regulators say. I don't care. I'm a payer. So I would look at that company and I would wholeheartedly agree with what that cardiologist said and say, who cares? That's clinical utility. So your analogy, this story is absolutely perfect, showing the distinction between what regulatory needs and what reimbursement and market access needs.
I want to isolate the term he used, though. Clinical significance sounds important and real and defined, but what does it really mean? Because you just described a clinically significant outcome that no one cares about. So is clinical significance even a thing?
So it's a concept, I think. In other words, it's really, is anybody going to buy the device and use it? That's really what it is. Is it doing something that's of value in healthcare? And that's how I think of it, rather than just a numeric endpoint that you can measure and theorize that it's better.
your term of utility versus validity, which rhymes, and I like it from that perspective, is also.
Yeah, I like Nick's.
It's important that these things rhyme, Joe. Yeah, rhyming is kind of the first order.
Now, I brought Jorg on because earlier in the call, Sue, you were talking about how you have a deliverable to your investors, I guess, to shop around to multiple contract manufacturers and decide, who to go with. And Jorg, that's what you do for a living, isn't it?
Well,
Yes, since we do development, often we're tasked with recommending a contract manufacturer for a particular item. We also find a lot of clients very confused about, oh, well, we want to take this prototype and do our trial on humans, and we tell them, well, you can't do that. You have to have a product that's manufactured in a GMP facility and all that sort of thing. So I find the customers have a lot of confusion with that particular aspect as to when they can actually have a product that can be used in a trial.
Sue?
We have a product that can be used in a trial, and so I am shopping around for medical device companies. I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 different companies right now, but we're ready to move forward. But it costs a lot of money, not for FDA, but just for all the trials and to optimize the device. It's an alpha prototype, and we have to make sure that it works as well as it does. And then there's a whole bunch of ISO certified. I think we've brought it down to about 9 different ISO certified sterility tests that need to be done, and utility tests that need to be done and performed. And so there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, and you have a relatively simple device. Many of the devices we design have maybe hundreds of components, thousands of components potentially. And, you really, just because something works on the bench, or even if you have a great looking beta prototype, a complete finished design, which is often where we take it, the complete finished design doesn't mean that that actual unit can be used in a clinical trial. It has to be produced in an ISO 13485 regulated facility under design controls, et cetera, and that's a much bigger step. You got to do all your tooling, you got to do your fixturing, you got to do all your assembly processes, and that's a very expensive and time-consuming process.
And replication. It has to be able to be replicated and then labeled and packaged and
everything. It's got to be basically got to be the finished product. I mean, you can still make changes later, but those have to be done under design control and fully documented processes. So you're really crossing the line between development and manufacturing, where you're under pretty loose design controls in terms of development because things are changing rapidly, and then you're moving into production, which is very strict design controls at that point.
Yeah, and production will be done by a different facility once you get up to scale.
Yes.
I'd ask, since you're both friends, and while Sue has done already a lot of the homework and may feel she has the answer, if I could get a half hour from both of you, I'd love it if you two independently had a conversation, because talking with Jorg this week, I learned that you advise, I mean, you certainly don't land all these clients. I'm not trying to pitch for your company, but you have startups 100 a year at least, where you have conversations about who do you talk to and who do you know, and you've been doing this for 30 some odd years. So just I's and T's and such. So if you could make time, and Jorg, if you could take her call,
love to
look over her shoulder and make sure she's doing the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I any type of advice I get, I'd love. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, don't be so quick to say any type of advice, because I have plenty of advice that I'm sure quite useless.
Years.
All right. Well, after that,
Thanks.
I'm calling you both off the call. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jorg. I'm getting tired of looking at Nick too. I'm just gonna. This is on this call. I will, however, say before we. It's already been an hour, and you may have more stuff to share, and I'm happy to hear it. Again, I'll invite Lee or Elizabeth or Eddie, anyone making something right now who wants to ask a question about how their trials are going to be conducted, have been conducted, double check on something. We got a bona fide expert here ready to take your call. So there comes
I see a hand.
I see a hand. Promote to panelist. There's my Wharton buddy. Unmute. Start video. Let's see if he's combed his hair today. Yeah, that's combed. You look good.
A little bit. But, yeah.
Good. I've seen work. What do you got, Eddie?
So Anna, hi. It's nice to meet you. I was there at the 10X event as well and did a little clip. Mine was about this device. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
So yeah, the stage that we're at is we're raising money to get this CE marked because we're confident that this is a Class 2A device.
Okay.
And therefore, in Europe, we don't need any clinical trials to gain the CE mark and technically be able to sell. But we are planning to do some clinical studies that we would call clinical marketing studies. And these would be to validate what our assumptions are around the health economics. But so some of the stuff that you and Nick were talking about earlier is very interesting for us.
Do we need to bring
yeah, it'd be nice to see him again and catch up with him. But
may I ask already a question? You said you
Sure.
don't need to do any clinical trials to get it on the market with your product. Are you claiming equivalence to another product or? Yeah.
So there are a couple of things. Yes. So Foley catheters exist and are reimbursed and all that sort of thing. And more currently, actually, there's a device in the U.S. Where we're not approaching the U.S. market right away, but there's a device in the U.S. that was recently given Medicare approval that does something somewhat similar, where our device is for male urinary retention, this other device is for female urinary retention, and operates in a somewhat similar way. And so we're confident that we could piggyback on that. What we want to know is, we haven't figured out yet, is how much their reimbursement is, because that'll affect our overall modeling economically. But this device is a second generation. So we know we've already gotten a CE mark previously, but the previous device had some issues with it that we've designed and improved. So we're, in a sense, also going to be piggybacking on some of our own previous work.
I see. Because I'm asking that question indeed because I was wondering if you have no data at all and no equivalence or a previous device. I think under the MDR would be a hard way to get on the market without that data. In this case, you probably need to collect data in a post-market phase still. But I think that the studies that you are considering from a health economic perspective might have some regulatory aspects in that as well to satisfy needs there.
Exactly. We definitely want to power it in that direction. And from conversations that I've had with Nick previously, and there are a couple of folks in Europe as well that we've been talking to, we do know that there are differences country by country in terms of reimbursement. And so we're looking at moving on that direction carefully. But how would any of those sorts of things fit in with the type of work that you do is my question.
So a big part of the work that my team does is the clinical evaluation. So the clinical evaluation plan and report. So bringing all the data together that you have to say something about safety performance. In this case, I think it's like related to that is your post-market clinical follow-up plan. So what type of studies are you going to do once you are on the market? And there will be an increased focus on that from the notified body perspective. So in this case, like where we could help in this case is setting up that clinical evaluation plan or the post-market clinical follow-up plan, outlining the ways that you're going to collect clinical data, either in a reactive way, like complaints coming in, but also proactive by those studies that you're considering, or more in a different way of like reviewing the literature and designing a search protocol for that, etc. So that's something that we could assist with in this case.
Okay, great.
Do you have the clinical evaluation report already?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay. Well, that would be something we could assist with as well.
Okay, great.
As I can tell, Nick added zero value to that conversation. I don't know why you asked him to come back on.
It's good to see you, Ed, and it is nice that he's thinking about the reimbursement, health economic considerations of the studies. There, I added something.
Well, like I say, the interesting thing, Nick, because you know our story better than Anna does, and my dog is barking in the background. I hope you, I don't know if you can hear that.
I have a newborn.
Yes, very, very equal in terms of how much they'll listen to us. But the question I have is how would the two of you interact? Because what I wouldn't want to do is do something which I think is going to be fitting for one market and then say, oh, actually, again, to what Nick was talking about earlier, if you just did this and this, it would have been much more encompassing and applicable to many different markets. Is that an area where the two, you know, your two groups would work together for us? Is that how that fits?
Yeah. Anna, is Anna or Anne? Sorry.
No.
Anne. Anne.
It's not an A at the end. Have a no.
I listen.
But I think that's where, in a CRO, whether I was formally working with Anna's company or not, that systematic literature review that she mentioned at the top of the call is arguably the most important thing you do all along, because she would come in and say, okay, what technologies are there for urinary retention or incontinence or whatever the thing is, and then we're going to go do a systematic literature review. We're going to pull 80 papers only going back to the year 2010. They have to be international and they have to be in the English language. You know, very good parameters around what that systematic literature review is. Then you sit down for weeks and you go through every one of those papers, if not just the abstract, and you say, what is the benchmark, you know, for urinary incontinence or retention or whatever it is? What is the benchmark that we have to meet and exceed? Because if we can't do that, we're never going to get adopted by reimbursement or value analysis committee. And so my group in Anna's company would sit down and be like, okay, what does your client want? Well, Ed wants this and this and this. Okay, let me go do the systematic literature review. Let me not just find the clinical endpoints, but assign dollar amounts to that. Well, if it's a 20% failure after 6 months and the device costs $2,500 in a $300 procedure, then Ed's dead in the water. He better be able to exceed and meet such and such. And then we would hand that data back to Anna's group and say, here, go design that study so that he both gets regulatory and ultimately in the end will get reimbursement or value analysis committee acceptance. So that's where it's kind of this Stockton to Malone, you know, that my group does this and Anna's group does this. No, that doesn't Stockton to Malone, that doesn't translate to the Netherlands.
I'm going to put
Reese's peanut butter.
YouTube.
You're the
Right.
It's the Reese's peanut butter cup analogy.
There you go.
We're getting
You
down
gotta
to the last couple of minutes. Jenny has something to add, and Elizabeth has been waiting patiently. Jenny, what did you want to say?
Hi, Ed. Hello from Melbourne, Australia. I haven't got the camera on because it's kind of like the middle of the night and I don't look my best. We have a product called Avado, and we could collect your post-market data very smartly for you and have it presented for any regulatory requirements that you may have. So I'd love to talk to you about it offline, but it's like 2:15 in the morning here, and I'm starting to fail very badly.
Before you fail completely, that's I'm thinking it's an extra expense for Ed, a startup, also cash strapped. How much are we talking, Jenny? And actually, before you answer, isn't the functionality of what you're offering something that we would assume would come from Anna's group anyhow? So isn't really Anna your client and not Ed?
No, I think it's similar to what Nick is saying. Like CROs like us can work with all type of parties. We can work with groups of like Nick. We can work with groups that offer software to capture that data. We work with core labs for imaging.
If I'm just trying to figure this out, if Ed were to say, "Oh, Jenny, this platform is fantastic. I absolutely want to use it," he'll pay Jenny, and he'll go to you and he'll say, "Hey, yeah, I know you're doing that stuff. I want you to use Jenny's software."
Mm-hmm.
Your bill isn't going to be any less, is it?
It is.
Will it be less?
Because otherwise we would have had a database structure.
That wouldn't be included in the trial anyhow? I mean, how else are you going to collect the data? You don't have the data.
How we typically work is what we call a cafeteria model. So you just say, I want you to do the writing and I'm going to do the database myself, or I'm going to have Jenny do the database. And then I want you to do the monitoring because I don't have staff in the UK and you live
So you were
closest.
telling me, and just for our
But you can also say, I want full package. Here is the study. Please make sure that I get a report in 2 years from now.
For our less Dutch listeners, she was talking about a cafeteria menu. Anyhow, so thank you both. That was clarifying. And Elizabeth, your turn. What have you got?
Well, this has been fantastic, and I'm new to this group, so I'm just listening and learning, and I would like to speak with Nick at some point. So we are, and actually almost everyone, we are working on a patient safety device that is essentially, we believe is actually not even going to be considered a medical device or even an accessory, but that remains to be seen. We are currently doing beta testing in the pre-hospital world and about to go into the inpatient world. And so it's a quality improvement initiative. That's it. It's a pretty straightforward. Right now, the institutions are using one thing, like a piece of Scotch tape, and we just want to replace the Scotch tape, basically. And so we're proposing this quality improvement initiative. My question is anything of that level, would that be applicable in the European market? A quality improvement initiative.
Can I show them a picture of what you're talking about, or do you have one that I know you're on the down low still, but the tape versus your concept? Can we show them so they can visualize it?
Sure. Let's see.
Larry, I brought you back on because
so basically what we're talking about is identifying a normal saline line infusion therapy, and right now the industry uses a piece of tape, and we've made a little plastic tag that looks like this to put on and that's it. And so we have a whole system. We've developed an entire system and a language, and we have 21 different tags, but right now our focus is just this one tag. And so we did a simulation study in, obviously with simulation with mannequin and healthcare providers, and that is going to be presented, that information will be presented at hopefully the American Heart Association meeting. Anyway, we are doing this quality improvement initiative, just to show we believe that it enhances the quality of the nurse's care with their patients. And so that was a question I had regarding the European market, if something that simple might be applicable.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure like how the physicians will receive it, but in general, simple things are being received well in in Europe as well. But in this case, I don't know exactly how it's being done now and whether there might be a solution already or whether it's a problem or not.
Right. No, I understand that. And Nick, I was listening to what you were saying about doing the studies and looking at 80 different papers. And we have been doing this work, which I would like to share sometime with, probably with you and maybe others as well. In addition to this manufacturing piece, we are talking to different manufacturers, and I could probably use some help with that as well. I have about 4 different companies.
You want to talk to Jorg about manufacturing. Larry, so let me paraphrase what in the dumbest downed version that I can get in my head. In an IV line, typically they're taking a piece of tape and writing saline on it, or they're writing, you know, whatever the medication is. And she's proposing a plastic thing that's more secure and more visible. You know that green means saline or whatever it is. Medical device, not medical device, according to you as a former FDA person.
Well, you know, it's yeah, I have to say I got burned last week when I saw that little handle that lady had invented to put on there, and I said that's not a medical device. It turns out it was a Class 1 device. So the key is that for cure, treatment, prevention of disease, you could argue that it's an instruction aid that could have some issues that if it wasn't correct, that could cause a problem for the patient. I don't know. I think the conservative way to take it is say it's a Class 1 device and it's probably exempt from everything, but you'd have to control the design, and you'd have to manufacture it in a controlled way.
And Larry, for everyone's benefit, I've learned this before, but I've forgotten it, of course. Class 1 exempt doesn't mean exempt from doing anything. In a sentence or two, what are you exempt from?
You're exempt usually from a 510K. In other words, you don't need to submit something to go to market with it. There's a few Class 1 devices that are also exempt from GMP, which is good if you can get it. But it's still a medical device. It has to be labeled correctly. You have to keep certain files on complaints and things like that. You're still regulated. It's just very lowly regulated.
Okay.
Right. So we did apply for a Q-sub meeting, and it got bounced back to us. We're now considering the 513G. Is this or is this not? So we are down that road already, and working.
That's a new term for me. I certainly have heard of pre-sub. What's a Q-sub?
Another name for it.
Oh, is the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Nick, let me put you way back to your Intermountain Health days. Elizabeth shows up and she's like, hey, look at my plastic piece that you can put on an IV line. What are you going to say? Oh my God, this is great, or why do I need this?
So Intermountain's an integrated delivery network. So there's the hospital and then the insurance company, and they're supposed to be one big happy family, but they're not. And what when I was on the value analysis committee for the last 4 years that I was there, we had a determination if this is capital equipment or if we're going to spend more than $250,000 a year on it. If it fit either one of those, it would go to the value analysis committee. So if we estimated we'll spend $250,000 on your device, it would go to the value analysis committee. And from a health economic perspective, I can't imagine that the topic would even come up. I think this would be something where I would go, look, it's $2.65 a piece. We're going to use, 100,000 of them a year, and I'll sit here quietly, unless your company came in and started to make claims during the value analysis committee meeting, if you were invited. Otherwise, your KOL would show up. And if you started to say, we know that we can decrease the number of wrong medications going to a patient or this, and then we go, okay, wait a minute. Now you're making a clinical argument claim. Now I need to see your data. So you have to be careful that you don't say too much and then you get the hair on the health economist's neck to stand up and go, wait, what? You're making a clinical claim? And you go, dang it, I should have just stayed quiet.
I mean, whether she presents that or not, that is the basis of why you're doing this in the first place, because you shared with me offline, I don't remember the numbers of how many wrongful thises and that's happen a year. If she starts going down that path, that's a claim, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I use the term claim different than Anna and Larry would. You know, I use it in a different colloquialism, I suppose. But yeah, be very careful.
From a marketing standpoint, where I'm making a brochure for her, and I make a sentence, and
so Nick, so for the whole group, and and I'm very happy to be a part of this. I have been very much under the radar for several years, for quite a few years now, for that very reason, Nick. You're the first person to actually make it clear, and I'm going to go back to all of my engineers, all of my physicians, all of the CMOs who have one way of thinking. And I understand, so you're using the word claim differently than the FDA uses the word claim, or Pfizer uses the word claim, some big company. Right. I understand that. So, medical errors, go through the whole speech. Medical errors, the third leading cause of death. Of those medical errors, medication errors are number one. I cut off the wrong leg. I took out the wrong lung. It's way down the list. I left the sponge in, way down the list. So that's the world that we're living in. And I've been very, very careful to not make any claims at all. Yeah. And I'm just trying to gather my data.
Because the minute you do that, if in the value analysis committee meeting, the manufacturer is almost never invited. They'll say, who's your key opinion leader? And you go, oh, it's Dr. Jones, who's an intensive care unit physician. Dr. Jones will come and be your advocate and will say, right, I really like this thing. And you have to really educate those KOLs on say enough to get the value analysis committee to go, oh, great, it's 200,000, we'll just buy them. But not to say so much that it's we're going to decrease the wrong, explantation.
Now I'm thinking, so what have you got? It sounds to me now that, hey, I've got a piece of plastic that can replace tape. Why do I care?
Right. So we have these key opinion leaders, and they're, I would say, influential across the country. And I've been very careful to encourage them not to say certain things. And it's difficult when you have a 3-star general and you're telling him not to say something, right? Yeah. It's a challenge, but so far I've been successful.
All you have to do is you tweet that he's an idiot and not to
So I am very, very aware of all of this. We're at a juncture where we're ready to go to the next step. And I just want to make sure we do it in a smart way. And sometimes the engineers are not the people to help drive that, and for sure not the clinicians.
A similar not similar technology to what you're doing is a thing called catheter connections.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
So that was invented by Vicky Farrar right here in Salt Lake City, and Merit Medical bought them out. And you may want to speak with Merit Medical in South Jordan, Utah.
Yeah,
they love this. They love these things all the time.
Make some introduction.
So yeah, Nick, I'd like to speak to you offline because I have another introduction to Merit Medical, and I just want to make sure the right people are connected.
I'm about to insert myself as host and purge everybody but Anna, because we are coming up to the bewitching hour of 90 minutes. That's the longest one we've ever done. So Anna, as I get rid of these other people and we come back to why we all met today, and I loved today. It was among the most interactive sprawling conversations we've had, we didn't exactly do what we advertised, which are, best practices for medical writing and the like.
That's
But
okay.
I think that this was as or more valuable. Seems kind of lame for me to say with a minute or two to go. What were you going to say?
Well, what was I going to say? Yes, but things to think about when you design a trial. And I think some of them have been covered in these discussions as well. So that's great. And if you feel that you want to hear more, and then I'm going to do a bit of marketing, I give a webinar on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah?
To give a bit more insight on clinical evidence as well. It's European focused though, so I am aware that many in this audience are more US oriented, but feel free to join in. And then I can add a bit more. Or otherwise I have another talk with you, Joe, and we can still cover the best practices in medical devices.
We can. Go ahead and send me the link for your webinar.
I will.
I have this up on our channel. I'll share it in the our weekly call channel, and I'll mention a link to your Tuesday event as well.
Thank you.
So what time is it there for you?
It's 6:30 now.
What's for dinner?
I think pizza just went into the oven. But first go for a swim. So
I'm sorry, what?
But I first wanted to go for a swim.
Nice. You have it in your building?
No.
Where are you going?
I cycle because I'm Dutch. No, so that's a swimming pool, like 5 minutes apart from here.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't want to keep you from your bike and the swimming pool and pizza.
And pizza. Mm-hmm.
This was great. And what's your boyfriend's name?
Eddie.
Thank Eddie for getting off the couch. This was much better than the white wall in your kitchen. Much more colorful. So
I will tell him so.
Let him know that,
Will do. And thank you, everyone, for the nice conversations.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Anna. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.